Captain Lihana stood in the center of the massive council chamber. The room was so large that her voice would echo if she spoke too loudly. Above her, floating platforms held the representatives of three powerful alien races. Their eyes looked down at her like she was some kind of interesting bug. The Veltari ambassador, who called himself Kreese, was made of what looked like living crystal. Light moved through his body in strange patterns when he spoke. So this is what humans call their best military officer? His voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. Next to him sat the representative from the Hive Collective. This creature looked like a giant ant, but with too many eyes and arms that moved in ways that hurt to watch. It clicked and buzzed when it talked, and a small device translated its words. The human shows no signs of proper neural linking. How can it command without the hive mind? The third alien was harder to look at directly. It was made of pure energy, contained in a suit that sparked and glowed. This was Admiral Vex from the Nexus Empire. When it spoke, the air itself seemed to vibrate. Their technology readings are primitive. We have moved beyond such crude methods centuries ago. Hannah kept her face calm. She had practiced this moment many times. Behind her stood Commander Park Jin-ho, the head of Earth's diplomatic mission. She could feel his nervousness, but she remained steady. Honored council members, Hannah began, humanity may be new to galactic civilization, but we have much to offer. Our tactical flexibility and problem-solving abilities. Kreese cut her off with a sound like breaking glass. Tactical flexibility? You mean chaos? You mean lack of proper doctrine? The crystal being leaned forward. We have reviewed your military history. Your species fights like wild animals. No coordination, no proper formations, no respect for the established rules of warfare. The Hive representative clicked rapidly. The translator said, "Agreement with crystal being. Humans show no unity of thought. Each unit acts independently. This creates weakness, not strength." Admiral Vex's energy form pulsed brighter. Your weapons are crude projectile systems. Your ships use chemical propulsion. Your communications rely on primitive electromagnetic signals. How do you expect to contribute to a galactic military alliance? Hannah had prepared for this. She stepped forward and activated a small holographic display. Images of human battles appeared in the air between her and the aliens. What you call chaos, we call adaptation. What you call crude, we call reliable. In every conflict, human forces have found ways to overcome superior technology through innovation and determination. The aliens looked at the images with what seemed like amusement. Kreese pointed one crystal finger at a display showing human soldiers in an urban battle. Look at this disorder. No proper formations. No coordination with air support. Each squad acts like it knows better than command. That's exactly right, Hannah said. Each squad can think for itself. When communication breaks down, when plans fail, when everything goes wrong, human soldiers don't stop fighting. They adapt, they find new solutions. The Hive representative made a sound like static. This is not efficiency, this is waste. Why use 10 different solutions when one perfect solution exists? Because sometimes the perfect solution doesn't work, Hannah replied. And sometimes the enemy expects the perfect solution. Admiral Vex's form flickered. Impossible. Our military science has been perfected over thousands of years. The mathematics of warfare are absolute. Optimal formations, optimal weapons, optimal strategies. Your primitive methods cannot improve on mathematical perfection. Commander Park stepped forward. If I may, honored members, perhaps we could discuss specific scenarios where human tactical approaches might complement your existing capabilities. No need, Kreese interrupted. We have made our decision. The crystal being's light patterns shifted to what Hannah somehow knew was dismissal. Humanity will be granted auxiliary support status. You will provide supplies, transport non-combat personnel, and perform basic maintenance duties. Leave the actual fighting to species who understand proper warfare. Hannah felt her jaw tighten but kept her voice level. We came here requesting full military alliance status. Our forces are trained, experienced, and ready to fight alongside yours against any threat. The Hive representative clicked in what the translator called amusement dismissal. Human entity does not understand. Galaxy is peaceful place. No real threats exist. Military forces are for ceremony, for shows of strength, for preventing small conflicts, not for actual war. Real war ended long ago, Admiral Vex added. When civilized species learned proper military doctrine, conflict became predictable, controllable, minimal. Your chaotic methods are unnecessary and dangerous. Kreese stood from his platform, crystal body reflecting the chamber's lights. The decision is final. Humanity is too unpredictable for full military integration. You lack discipline, proper command structure, and respect for established military science. Perhaps in a few centuries, when your species has matured, we can revisit this discussion. Hannah looked up at the three aliens. They seemed so confident, so sure of themselves. Their technology was indeed superior to anything humans had. Their ships were faster, their weapons more powerful, their defenses nearly impenetrable. By every measure that mattered to them, humans were outclassed. I understand your decision, Hannah said finally. But I want to make one thing clear. You're not rejecting humanity because we're weak. You're rejecting us because we're different. Because we don't fit into your perfect theories about how war should work. The aliens exchanged what looked like glances. Kreese spoke first. Different is not always better, human. Sometimes different is simply ... inadequate. We shall provide you with proper equipment and training protocols, the Hive representative offered. Perhaps we can teach you correct methods, reduce your chaotic tendencies. Admiral Vex's energy form pulsed in what might have been agreement. Your assignment to auxiliary status includes educational programs. Our military advisors will show you how proper civilized warfare functions. Hannah nodded slowly. Thank you for your generous offer. She turned to Commander Park. I think we have our answer. As they walked toward the chamber's exit, Park whispered, That could have gone better. Could it? Hannah whispered back. They just told us everything we need to know about them. They think war is predictable. They think their methods are perfect. They think they have nothing left to learn, and that's bad because... Hannah paused at the chamber's massive doors. Behind them, the three aliens were already discussing other business, dismissing humanity as easily as they might dismiss a request for better lunch menus. Because, Hannah said quietly, in my experience, the moment you think you have war figured out, that's when war teaches you how wrong you are. They left the chamber together. Neither of them looked back at the aliens who had just relegated humanity to the role of galactic janitors. Neither of them saw the way the aliens' confident postures and dismissive attitudes would look very different in just a few months, but Hannah was already thinking ahead. Auxiliary support status meant access to alien technology, even if they couldn't use the best stuff. It meant placement throughout the galaxy, even if they were supposed to stay out of the way. Most importantly, it meant the aliens would ignore them. Sometimes, Hannah thought as they boarded their transport ship, being underestimated was the greatest advantage you could ask for. 3 months after the council meeting, Captain Lee Hannah stepped off the transport ship onto New Sol's landing pad. The base was built into a series of connected buildings that stretched across a valley between two mountain ranges. It looked like a mix of human military architecture and alien technology that someone had tried to blend together, but hadn't quite succeeded. The air was crisp and clean, nothing like the recycled atmosphere of the council station. Hannah took a deep breath and looked around at what was now her command. It wasn't much compared to the massive alien military installations she had seen, but it was theirs. Sergeant Kim Do-yun was waiting for her with a datapad full of reports. He was a stocky man with graying hair and the kind of face that had seen too many difficult decisions. "Welcome to paradise, Captain," he said, with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "That bad?" Hannah asked, taking the datapad. "Depends on how you feel about babysitting aliens who think we're too stupid to tie our own boots." Do-yun nodded toward a group of beings near the main building. "Our advisors arrived last week. They've been very helpful in explaining why. Everything we do is wrong." Hannah looked at the aliens. There were 3 of them, one from each of the major species. The Veltari advisor was smaller than Kreese had been, its crystal body a pale blue instead of the deep purple of higher-ranking members. The Hive Collective had sent what looked like a worker drone, and the Nexus Empire representative was barely visible inside its containment suit. "What kind of advice have they been giving?" Hannah asked. "The usual. Our barracks are arranged wrong. Our training schedules are inefficient. Our weapons maintenance protocols don't follow proper procedures." Do-Yun's voice was carefully neutral, but Hannah could hear the frustration underneath. They walked toward the main building together. As they moved, Do-Yun continued his briefing. "The real problem isn't the advisors, though. It's what's happening in the Outer Rim. Lieutenant Troy Minho has been tracking pirate activity, and the patterns are getting weird." "Weird how?" "Too coordinated. Pirates are supposed to be random opportunists, right? Hit whatever target looks easy, grab what they can, run away fast. But these attacks are different. They're testing things." Hannah stopped walking. "Testing what?" "Response times. Defense patterns. How long it takes for military ships to arrive after a distress call. They're not stealing much, but they're learning a lot." Inside the main building, the command center buzzed with quiet activity. Human technicians worked alongside a few alien specialists, though Hannah noticed the 2 groups didn't interact much. The aliens stood at their own stations, occasionally, making notes on devices that glowed or hummed or did things that hurt to look at directly. Lieutenant Troy Minho approached them. He was young for his rank, with sharp eyes and nervous energy. "Captain, you need to see this." He led them to a large display showing a map of the local sector. Red dots marked the locations of recent pirate attacks. At first glance, they looked random. But as Minho highlighted them in chronological order, a pattern emerged. "They're moving in a spiral," Hannah said. "Exactly. Starting from the outer edge and working their way toward more populated systems. But here's the really strange part." Minho touched the display, and additional information appeared next to each attack. "Look at what they're taking." Hannah studied the data. "Medical supplies, communication equipment, ship parts. Nothing valuable to normal pirates. And look at this," Minho continued. He highlighted several attacks in blue. "These hits happened at the same time as the pirate raids, but they're not connected. At least, they shouldn't be." The blue dots showed alien military patrols that had reported equipment failures or navigation problems. Nothing serious, just minor issues that forced them to return to base for repairs or recalibration. "You think the pirates are causing the equipment failures?" Hannah asked. "I think something is causing both the pirate attacks and the equipment failures," Minho replied. "Something that wants to study how our defenses work when they're under stress." Dr. Yun-Nari entered the command center, carrying a tablet and looking troubled. She was the base's chief scientist, a woman in her 40s who had spent most of her career trying to understand alien technology. "Captain, I'm glad you're back. We need to talk." They moved to a smaller conference room where Dr. Yun could speak more freely. She activated a privacy screen, a piece of human technology that the aliens claimed was unnecessary but couldn't seem to penetrate. "I've been analyzing the equipment our advisors brought," Dr. Yun began. "The good news is that it's incredibly advanced. Energy weapons that make our best rifles look like slingshots, shields that can stop almost anything, communication systems that work faster than light." "That sounds like good news," Hannah said. "What's the bad news?" "The bad news is that it's all designed with built-in limitations. The weapons have safety protocols that prevent certain types of targeting. The shields automatically shut down if they detect friendly fire, even if that friendly fire is intentional. The communication systems won't transmit anything that the main network classifies as non-standard military doctrine." Sergeant Do-Yun frowned. "So they've given us equipment that won't let us fight the way we know how to fight." "Exactly. And there's more." Dr. Yun touched her tablet, and a technical diagram appeared in the air above the table. "All of this equipment has backdoors. Remote access points that allow the aliens to monitor everything we do and shut down our systems if they decide we're using them incorrectly. Hannah leaned back in her chair. They're not trying to help us. They're trying to control us. I don't think it's malicious, Dr. Yoon said. I think they genuinely believe their way is the only correct way. The equipment is designed to enforce proper military doctrine. From their perspective, they're preventing us from making dangerous mistakes. From our perspective, Minho said, they're making sure we can never surprise an enemy. Hannah stood and walked to the window. Outside, she could see human soldiers training with alien weapons under the watchful eyes of their advisors. The aliens frequently stopped the exercises to correct techniques or explain proper procedures. What about our own equipment? She asked. The stuff we brought from Earth? Still works fine, Dr. Yoon replied. But the advisors keep recommending that we phase it out in favor of the superior alien technology. And if we refuse? They file reports with the Galactic Council about our lack of cooperation and failure to adapt to civilized military standards. Hannah was quiet for a moment, thinking. Finally, she turned back to the others. What if we did both? Both what? Do-yeon asked. What if we used their equipment for official exercises and reports, but kept training with our own gear in private? What if we learned their systems well enough to understand their weaknesses, while keeping our own capabilities secret? Dr. Yoon raised an eyebrow. That would be a lot of extra work. And if the advisors found out? If the advisors found out, we'd get a bad report to the council, Hannah said. But we already have a bad reputation with them. What's the worst they could do? Demote us from auxiliary support to auxiliary support. Minho grinned. You want us to become sneaky? I want us to become prepared, Hannah corrected. Lieutenant, keep tracking those pirate attacks. I want to know everything about their patterns. Dr. Yoon, keep studying the alien technology, but also start working on ways to modify our own equipment. Maybe we can find ways to make our primitive systems do things the aliens don't expect. And the advisors? Do-yeon asked. We smile, we nod, we follow their protocols during official training sessions. But we also start running unofficial exercises using scenarios they wouldn't approve of. If something is testing our defenses, I want to make sure it gets some surprises. As they left the conference room, Hannah felt a familiar feeling in her stomach. It was the same feeling she'd had before every major battle in her career. The feeling that something important was coming, and that being ready for the expected threat wasn't going to be enough. She looked out at the peaceful valley surrounding their base. In the distance, alien cargo ships moved across the sky in perfect formation, following flight paths calculated for optimal efficiency. Everything looked calm and orderly and safe, but Hannah had learned long ago that when everything looked perfect, that was usually when everything was about to go very wrong. Captain Lee Hannah stood on the bridge of the human patrol ship Soul's Pride, watching the stars drift by through the main viewer. They were 3 days out from New Sol Base, conducting what the Galactic Council called a routine supply run through the Kepler Nebula. In reality, it was anything but routine. The nebula was beautiful in a way that made her chest tight. Clouds of purple and gold gas stretched as far as the sensors could reach, lit from within by newborn stars. It was also the perfect place to hide something big. Contact ahead, announced pilot Nam Yu-jin from her station. She was young, maybe 25, with steady hands and reflexes that impressed even the alien advisors. 2 ships, alien configuration. Hannah moved to the tactical display. Veltari patrol vessels, they're supposed to be here. She opened a communication channel. Veltari ships, this is Captain Hannah of the Soul's Pride. We're conducting scheduled supply operations in this sector. The response came back immediately, the crystal being voice translated through their communication system. Human ship, we acknowledge your presence. Maintain minimum safe distance while we complete our patrol. Sweep. Understood. Hannah closed the channel and turned to her crew. The bridge was cramped compared to alien ships, but every person here knew their job. Engineer Oh Soo-jin monitored the power systems from her station, while communications specialist Lim Hyun-woo kept track of all ship-to-ship traffic in the area. Captain, Lim called out, I'm picking up some strange readings on the long-range sensors. Something big, maybe 10,000 kilometers out, but the signal keeps fading in and out. Nebula interference? Hana asked. Engineer Osojin shook her head. No, this is different. The interference is natural, but this signal, it's like something is deliberately trying to hide. Hana felt that familiar tightness in her stomach. Yellow alert. Pilot Nam, take us closer to the Veltari ships. If there's something out here, we're safer together. As they changed course, the tactical display lit up with new contacts. First one, then three, then dozens of objects emerging from the deep nebula clouds. The shapes on the screen didn't look like any ship Hana had ever seen. They were organic, twisted, like someone had taken metal and flesh and fused them together into something that should not exist. What are those? Nam whispered, before anyone could answer. The lead alien patrol ship exploded. There was no warning, no exchange of fire, no dramatic battle. One moment the Veltari vessel was there, its crystalline hull gleaming in the nebula's light. The next moment it was gone, replaced by expanding debris and the screams of dying crystal beings over the communication channels. The second Veltari ship lasted maybe 3 seconds longer. Hana watched as something that looked like a living ship reached out with appendages that moved too fast to track. The alien vessel's shields flared once, then failed. The ship was pulled apart like a child's toy. All stop, Hana shouted. Full. Reverse, get us away from those things. The organic ships turned toward the Soul's Pride. Up close, they were even more terrifying. The lead vessel was easily twice the size of Hana's ship, its hull covered in what looked like armor plating that pulsed with its own heartbeat. Weapons that didn't look like weapons extended from its sides. They're scanning us, Lim reported, his voice tight with fear. Some kind of energy beam, but it's not like anything in our databases. Shields up, Hana ordered. We don't have shields, Osojin reminded her. Remember? The alien said our defensive systems were too primitive to bother upgrading. Hana cursed. Under her breath. The alien advisors had been so confident that nothing in this sector posed a threat. Now they were facing something that had just destroyed 2 advanced alien warships like they were made of paper. The organic ship completed its scan and began moving toward them. Hana could see smaller vessels breaking away from the main group, surrounding the Soul's Pride like predators circling wounded prey. Options? She asked. Not many, Osojin replied. Their ships are faster, bigger, and apparently much better armed. Our weapons might scratch their paint. What about that trick you showed me last week, the power rerouting thing? Oh, Sujin's eyes widened. Captain, that's incredibly dangerous. If I push our reactor beyond safety limits, if you don't, we're dead anyway. Hana looked around the bridge at her crew. They were all looking at her, waiting for orders that might save their lives or kill them all faster. Do it! Engineer Osojin's fingers flew across her control panel. Warning lights began flashing as she bypassed safety systems that human engineers had spent decades perfecting. I'm redirecting power from life support and artificial gravity to the engines and weapons. We'll have maybe 10 minutes before the reactor overheats or the crew passes out from oxygen deprivation. That'll have to be enough? Pilot Nam, I need you to do something no pilot manual would ever recommend. Nam Yujin grinned, and Hana saw the same wild look in her eyes that she'd seen in every great pilot she'd ever known. What did you have in mind? I want you to fly like these things have never seen before. No predictable patterns, no safety. Margins, no regard for what the ship is supposed to be able to handle. Captain, Lim interrupted, the lead ship is hailing us. Put it through. The voice that came through the communication system didn't sound like any alien species Hana knew. It was deep, multi-toned, like several different creatures speaking at once. Human vessel. You are new. We have not tasted your kind before. Tasted? Hana repeated. We consume, we learn, we grow. Your crystalline companions provided useful knowledge. You will provide different knowledge. Prepare to be harvested. The communication cut off, and the organic ships began their attack. What followed was 10 minutes of the most insane flying Hana had ever experienced. Pilot Nam threw the Soul's Pride through maneuvers that should have torn the ship apart. She used the nebula's gas clouds as cover, flying blind through particle storms that would have fried any alien navigation system. The enemy ships were fast, but they seemed confused by the human vessel's erratic movement. They fired weapons that could have destroyed planets, but kept missing because Nam refused to fly in straight lines or predictable curves. Engineer Sojin somehow kept the ship together through power fluctuations that would have killed a less experienced crew. She rerouted energy in ways that broke every rule in the engineering manual, giving them just enough firepower to damage one of the smaller attacking vessels. Got one. Lim shouted as the organic ship spun away, leaking something that might have been blood or fuel, but there were too many of them, and the Soul's Pride was dying by degrees. The reactor was overheating, life support was failing, and structural integrity was down to 30%. Captain, Osojin called out, I can give you one more trick, but it'll definitely kill us. Will it take some of them with us? Maybe. Hannah looked at the tactical display. The organic ships were closing in, confident now that their prey was wounded. She thought about the Veltari crews who had died without even understanding what had killed them. She thought about the reports she'd read about pirate attacks that weren't really pirate attacks. Do it, she said, but before Osojin could initiate whatever desperate plan she had in mind, something unexpected happened. The organic ships suddenly pulled back, their formation breaking apart. The lead vessel sent one final message. Interesting. Your kind fights with chaos. We will remember this when we consume your worlds. Then they were gone, disappearing back into the nebula as quickly as they had appeared. Hana sank into her captain's chair, her hands shaking from adrenaline. Around her, the bridge crew worked frantically to keep their ship from falling apart. Why did they leave? Nam asked. I don't think they were here to fight, Hana replied slowly. I think they were here to learn. And we just taught them something they weren't expecting. She looked at the debris field where the Veltari ships had been destroyed. 2 advanced alien warships, wiped out in seconds by an enemy that fought unlike anything in the galactic military databases. Set course for home, she ordered. And start recording everything. The Council needs to know what's coming. But even as she gave the order, Hannah suspected the aliens wouldn't believe her report. They'd assume she had misunderstood what she'd seen, or that her primitive sensors had given her bad data. After all, their perfect military science had no place for enemies that couldn't be predicted or countered. She was about to find out how wrong that assumption was. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was called for what the aliens termed urgent security consultation. Captain Lee Hana stood once again in the massive chamber, but this time the atmosphere was different. The floating platforms that held the alien representatives seemed higher, more distant, and the lights were dimmer. She had returned from the Kepler Nebula 3 days ago with footage, sensor readings, and detailed reports about the organic ships that had destroyed 2 Veltari patrol vessels. The evidence was overwhelming, but the aliens' reactions had been exactly what she expected. Captain Hannah, Ambassador Kreese began, his crystal body pulsing with irritated red light. We have reviewed your ... report. While we appreciate your concern, there are several inconsistencies in your data that suggest equipment malfunction or misinterpretation. Hana kept her voice steady. What kind of inconsistencies? For one thing, the Hive Collective representative clicked rapidly. Your sensors show ships with impossible power signatures. No known technology can generate that level of energy without massive infrastructure support. Admiral Vex's energy form flickered as he spoke. Additionally, the tactical patterns you described make no sense. No intelligent species would use such chaotic attack methods. It would be inefficient, wasteful, tactically unsound. I saw those ships destroy your patrol vessels in seconds, Hannah said. The Veltari crews didn't even have time to send a distress signal. Kreese's crystal body shifted to a dismissive blue color. The Veltari patrol reported equipment failures before contact was lost. Most likely they experienced catastrophic system malfunctions. The nebula is known to cause such problems. Equipment failures that happened to occur at the exact moment unknown ships appeared. Coincidences happen, Captain, Admiral Vex replied, more often than conspiracy theories. Intelligence Officer Han Jiwoo had been standing quietly behind Hannah throughout the session. Now she stepped forward with a datapad in her hands. If I may, honored council members, we've detected similar incidents in 17 other sectors over the past 6 months. The aliens turned their attention to her. Han Jiwoo was a small woman with sharp eyes and the kind of quiet confidence that came from knowing things other people didn't want to hear. 17 incidents of equipment failure coinciding with unidentified contacts, she continued. In every case, the failures occurred on military vessels conducting routine patrols. In every case, contact was lost for brief periods before being restored with reports of navigation difficulties or communication malfunctions. The Hive representative made a sound like static. This proves nothing. Equipment fails. It is the nature of technology, but not in these patterns, Han Jiwoo insisted. She activated her datapad, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. The failures are too coordinated, too specific. Someone or something is systematically probing your defenses? Admiral Vex's energy form pulsed brighter. Impossible. Our early warning networks would detect any large-scale intrusion. Our sensor grids cover every major system in the galaxy. Unless the intruders know how your sensor grids work, Hannah said. Unless they've been studying your technology for long enough to find ways around it. The 3 alien representatives exchanged what passed for glances among their species. Finally, Kreese spoke. Even if we accepted your theory, which we do not, what would you suggest we do about it? Prepare for a real fight, Hannah replied. Deploy your fleets in defensive positions, increase patrol frequency. Start thinking about what you'd do if an enemy showed up who doesn't follow your rules of warfare. The Hive representative clicked. In what Hannah recognized as amusement. Human entity still does not understand. Galaxy is peaceful place. Real war ended when civilized species learned proper methods. There are no enemies left who pose genuine threat. What about the reports from the Outer Rim colonies? Han Jiwoo asked. Increased pirate activity, missing supply ships, communication blackouts? Admiral Vex waved a hand, causing electrical discharges to arc between his fingers. Minor criminal activity. Local security forces can handle such problems. There is no need for major military deployment. Hannah felt her frustration building. You're not listening to what I'm telling you. Those weren't pirates in the nebula. Those were scouts. They were testing your responses, learning your capabilities. Learning what? Kreese demanded. That our ships are faster, our weapons more powerful, our defenses superior to anything this galaxy has ever seen? Learning that your ships follow predictable patterns, Hannah replied. That your weapons have built-in safety restrictions. That your defenses are designed to counter known threats using established tactics. The aliens fell silent for a moment. Then the Hive representative began clicking rapidly. Human arrogance reaches new levels. You suggest that species with millions of years of military evolution could be outmatched by unknown primitives? I'm suggesting that maybe being predictable isn't always an advantage. Admiral Vex's form flared with bright energy. Predictability is efficiency. Efficiency is survival. Chaos is death. He gestured toward Hannah with one crackling hand. Your species represents chaos. Perhaps that is why you see chaos everywhere. The session continued for another hour, but the outcome was clear from the beginning. The aliens had made their decision. Before Hannah ever entered the chamber, her reports were filed as equipment malfunction with possible human error. The footage from the Kepler Nebula was classified as inconclusive due to nebula interference. Finally, Kreese announced the Council's resolution. The Galactic Defense Fleet will conduct standard patrol sweeps of the affected sectors. Any equipment malfunctions will be investigated and repaired. Enhanced security protocols will be implemented for all military communications. Enhanced security protocols? Hannah asked. Tighter control of information flow, the Hive representative explained. reduced communication between individual ships to prevent spread of panic or misinformation, centralized command authority to ensure proper tactical coordination. Hannah stared at them. You're making your forces less flexible, not more. We are making them more efficient, Admiral Lex corrected, more disciplined, more capable of executing proper military doctrine without contamination from chaotic human thinking. As the session ended, Hannah found herself walking out of the chamber with Han Jae-woo. Neither woman spoke until they were safely aboard their transport ship. They're going to get slaughtered, Han Jae-woo said finally. I know. Hannah sat down heavily in the pilot's seat. And there's nothing we can do to stop it. What about our people? The human forces scattered throughout the galaxy on auxiliary support missions? Hannah was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Finally, she activated the ship's secure communication system and began composing a message to all human military commanders. Priority alert to all human forces, she began. Be prepared for immediate defensive action. Do not rely on alien equipment or support. Trust your training, your instincts, and your ability to adapt. Something is coming, and when it arrives, we may be the only ones ready for it. She paused, then added, Remember what they taught us at the academy. The enemy gets a vote in every battle plan. Make sure you're ready to vote back. As their ship left the council station, Hannah looked back at the massive structure floating in space. Inside, the three alien species were probably already planning their enhanced security protocols and improved tactical coordination. They were convinced that their military science was perfect, that their methods were unbeatable, that any threat could be countered with sufficient application of established doctrine. Hannah hoped they were right. But she'd been a soldier long enough to know that hope wasn't a strategy, and in the dark between the stars, something was watching the aliens prepare their perfect defenses, learning every detail of their predictable responses and getting ready to teach them the difference between military science and military reality. The Galactic Defense Fleet assembled in the Vale sector was the largest military force ever gathered in known space. Captain Lee Hannah watched it from the bridge of a human supply ship positioned safely behind the main battle lines, and even she had to admit it was an impressive sight. 3,000 ships from the three major alien species hung in perfect formation against the stars. The Veltari crystal ships reflected starlight in rainbow patterns. The Hive Collective's vessels moved in precise geometric arrangements that hurt to look at directly. The Nexus Empire's energy-based warships crackled with contained power that made space itself seem to bend around them. It's beautiful, said communications specialist Lim Hyun-woo from his station. Like a work of art. It's also completely predictable, Hannah replied grimly. She'd been studying the alien battle formations for 2 weeks now, ever since the Council had finally acknowledged that something was attacking their outer rim colonies. Look at those positioning patterns. Every ship knows exactly where every other ship is supposed to be. Isn't that good? Asked pilot Nam Yujin. Coordination is important in battle. Coordination, yes, but this isn't coordination. This is choreography. Hannah pointed to the tactical display. Watch how they respond to formation changes. It's like a dance. Beautiful, precise, and completely rehearsed. The alien fleet had been gathering here for 3 days, waiting for the enemy that intelligence reports said was moving toward the core systems. The reports described massive biomechanical vessels, but the alien commanders were confident their superior technology and tactics would prevail. Admiral Lex himself was commanding the fleet from a massive Nexus Empire dreadnought that pulsed with barely contained energy. His tactical briefings had been distributed to all ships, including the human support vessels. The plan was elegant in its simplicity: establish overlapping fields of fire, maintain communication networks, execute coordinated strikes according to predetermined patterns. Contact! Lim suddenly called out. Multiple ships emerging from hyperspace. Distance ... Oh my god. The tactical display lit up with new contacts. First dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of organic vessels dropping out of faster-than-light travel in a ragged cloud that stretched across several light minutes of space. They didn't look like ships so much as living creatures, all teeth and claws and hunger made manifest in metal and flesh. Hannah had seen these beings before in the Kepler Nebula, but only a handful of scouts. This was their entire fleet, and it was massive beyond imagination. Each ship was unique, as if they'd grown rather than been built. Some looked like giant insects with metal carapaces. Others resembled deep-sea creatures covered in armor plating. All of them pulsed with their own internal light. "Alien fleet is hailing us," Lim reported. "Put it through." Admiral Vex's voice came over the communication channel, calm and confident. "Unknown vessels, you are trespassing in Galactic Council space. Identify yourselves and state your intentions." The response came back in that same multi-toned voice Hannah remembered from the nebula. "We are the devourers. We consume. We learn. We grow. You will feed us." "I don't think they're here to negotiate," Nam observed. The Galactic Defense Fleet began its carefully planned response. Ships moved into attack formation with mechanical precision. Energy weapons charged according to optimal power distribution calculations. Shields configured themselves for maximum defensive efficiency. It was everything alien. Military science said a proper battle should be. The Devourers attacked with no formation at all. The organic ships scattered in every direction like a swarm of angry wasps. Some accelerated to impossible speeds, while others seemed to fold space around themselves. Several of the larger vessels simply vanished, then reappeared inside the alien formation. The first Veltari ship to die lasted exactly 4 seconds. A Devourer vessel that looked like a mechanical shark wrapped in living tissue appeared directly above it and extended what might have been weapons or might have been feeding appendages. The crystal ship's shields held for a moment, then shattered like glass. The ship itself was pulled apart and consumed so quickly that Hannah barely saw it happen. "They're not fighting," she whispered. "They're feeding." The alien fleet tried to respond according to doctrine. Ships moved to support their damaged colleagues. Weapons fired in coordinated volleys designed to maximize damage while minimizing friendly fire incidents. Communication networks shared tactical data to ensure optimal target selection. The Devourers ignored every rule of civilized warfare. A group of organic ships surrounded a Hive collective vessel and began tearing it apart while it was still shooting at them. They didn't seem to care about taking damage as long as they could consume their target. Another Devourer ship flew directly into a Nexus Empire energy blast, absorbed the power, and used it to fuel an attack that vaporized 3 nearby vessels. "This is impossible," Lim said, staring at his sensors. "They're not using any recognizable tactics. They're just attacking everything at once." "They don't need tactics," Hannah replied. "They've been studying alien military doctrine for months. They know exactly what the fleet will do in response to any given situation." On the tactical display, the beautiful formations of the Galactic Defense Fleet were dissolving into chaos. Ships that tried to maintain proper positioning were easy targets. Ships that broke formation to help their allies disrupted the coordination of their neighbors. Every move the aliens made was predictable, and the Devourers countered it effortlessly. Admiral Vex's voice came over the communication channel again, but this time it wasn't calm. "All ships, execute emergency scatter pattern Delta 7. Repeat. Emergency scatter pattern Delta 7. "They're going to run," Nam said. "They're going to try," Hannah corrected. "But look at those Devourer ships. They're not trying to destroy the fleet. They're hurting it." She was right. The organic vessels were moving in seemingly random patterns that forced the alien ships into tighter and tighter groups. Every time a Veltari, Hive, or Nexus ship tried to escape, it found its path blocked by creatures that seemed to anticipate exactly where it would go. The slaughter continued for 3 hours. Hannah watched ship after ship disappear from the tactical display, consumed by an enemy that fought like nothing in any military manual. The aliens tried every tactic they knew, executed every maneuver in their doctrine, followed every protocol. Their military science had developed over millions of years. None of it worked. The Devourers had been watching and learning for too long. They knew how Veltari ships moved when their formations were disrupted. They understood how Hive Collective vessels coordinated their attacks. They had studied Nexus Empire energy patterns until they could predict them better than the aliens themselves. "Captain," Lim called out, his voice tight with fear, "some of the Devourer ships are breaking away from the main battle. They're heading for the support vessels. All human ships," Hana broadcast on the emergency channel, "break formation immediately. Do not follow alien retreat protocols. Scatter and run for the nearest jump point using random courses." "What about the alien survivors?" Nam asked. Hana looked at the tactical display. Of the 3,000 ships that had made up the Galactic Defense Fleet, maybe 100 were still functional. They were trying to retreat in good order, following the procedures their training had drilled into them. The Devourers were following them easily, picking off stragglers and damaged vessels like predators culling a herd. "There won't be any survivors if they keep flying in predictable patterns," Hana said. "Take us out of here. Maximum speed, random course changes, no communication with any other ship." As their vessel jumped to hyperspace, Hana took one last look at the battle behind them. The pride of galactic civilization was being systematically destroyed by an enemy that refused to fight fair, refused to follow the rules, refused to be civilized. For the first time in millions of years, the galaxy's perfect military science had encountered something it couldn't predict or control. And now the Devourers knew exactly how weak their next targets would be. 2 weeks after the disaster in the Vale sector, the Devourers arrived at Earth's outer colonies. They came expecting easy prey, having feasted on the finest military forces the galaxy could offer. What they found instead was something they had never encountered before: humans who refused to fight by any recognizable rules. Captain Lihana stood in the command center of New Sol Base, watching reports flood in from across human space. The aliens had been right about one thing: human technology was primitive compared to galactic standards. But they had been wrong about everything else. "Devourer fleet detected in the Bazan system," reported Lieutenant Choi Minho. "Estimated 40 vessels, same configuration as the ones that hit the alien fleet." "What's Captain Bay's status?" Hana asked. "The Dagu's Fist is still in system, but it's heavily damaged from the previous engagement. Captain Bay says his engines are shot, and he can't outrun them." Hana nodded grimly. She'd been coordinating the human defense for 6 days now, ever since the surviving alien commanders had fled to their core worlds and left humanity to face the Devourers alone. Every engagement had been a learning experience, and they were learning fast. "Tell Captain Bay to implement Protocol 7, she ordered. Minho's eyes widened. "Captain, Protocol 7 is, insane, yes. But it works." Across the galaxy, Captain Bay Taeyong received the order aboard his crippled destroyer. The Dagu's Fist had been hit by Devourer weapons in the previous battle, losing most of its defensive systems and half its crew. By any reasonable military standard, the ship should have been abandoned, but human military standards had stopped being reasonable the moment the Devourers showed up. "You heard the captain," Bay announced to his remaining crew. "Protocol 7, all hands to emergency stations." Engineering Officer Ko Jiho looked up from his damaged console. "Sir, the reactor is barely stable. If we push it any harder, then we'll go out with a bang that'll give those things indigestion," Bay replied. "Do it." What happened next would have horrified any alien military observer. Ko Jiho began systematically removing every safety system on the ship's reactor, pushing it far beyond its design limits. The artificial gravity failed, life support started cycling erratically, and warning alarms began screaming throughout the ship, but the Dagu's Fist suddenly accelerated like a missile. The Devourer ships had been moving in to consume the crippled human vessel, following patterns that had worked perfectly against alien prey. They expected the humans to either surrender or try to escape using conventional tactics. Instead, Captain Bay aimed his ship directly at the largest Devourer vessel and pushed his dying reactor to critical overload. The collision should have destroyed both ships. It did destroy both ships, but the explosion also took out 3 more Devourer vessels that had been moving in to support their flagship. Vision system clear, Minho reported. Captain Bay's final transmission was, "Well, it's not repeatable." In mixed company. "He bought us time," Hana said. "What's the situation in the other systems?" The tactical display showed the current state of human space. Red dots marked devourer incursions, blue dots showed human defensive positions, and yellow dots indicated battles in progress. It looked like chaos, but there was method to the madness. "Major Song is holding the Inchin system using the asteroid field tactic," reported Sergeant Kim Do-yeon. "She's turned mining charges into ship killers and is playing hide-and-seek among the rocks." "The Devourers don't know how to handle guerrilla warfare," observed Dr. Yoon Nari. "They're used to fighting fleets in open space, not individual ships using irregular tactics." On his tactical display, Hana could see Major Song Yena's battle unfolding in real time. The Inchin system's asteroid belt had been turned into a maze of hidden weapons and improvised fortifications. Song's forces were using mining ships and cargo haulers as attack vessels, appearing from behind asteroids to launch salvos of modified mining charges before disappearing again. The Devourer ships were larger, faster, and more heavily armed, but they couldn't hit targets that refused to stay in one place long enough to be shot at. Every time they moved to clear an asteroid, another ship would attack them from a different direction. "Devourers are pulling back from Inchin," Minho reported. They're retreating." "First time that's happened," Do-yeon observed. "Maybe they're learning that humans taste bad." The communication board lit up with an incoming message from the Olsen system. "This is Tech Specialist Ko Jiho calling New Seoul Base. We've got a situation here." Ko Jiho had survived the destruction of the Daegu's Fist by being transferred to another ship just before the battle. Now he was part of the defense of Olsen, a system with 3 inhabited planets and a major industrial complex. "What's your status, Ko?" Hana asked. "We've got 20 Devourer ships moving in on the main planet. Our defense fleet consists of 2 patrol boats, a cargo hauler, and a mining barge." Ko's voice was steady despite the impossible odds. "But I've got an idea that might work. Let's hear it." "The industrial complex has been manufacturing spare parts for alien ships, right? All those components with built-in safety systems and remote access points? Right. Well, I've been modifying them. Turning safety systems into booby traps, access points into backdoors. If the Devourers try to consume any of this equipment," Hana grinned, "they're going to get a very unpleasant surprise." The Battle of Olsen became a textbook example of human tactical innovation. Ko Jiho had spent weeks preparing for this moment, turning an entire industrial complex into one massive trap. When the Devourer ships moved in to consume the planet's technology, they found themselves absorbing equipment that had been deliberately sabotaged, reactors that exploded when integrated into organic systems, computer networks that carried viruses designed to corrupt biomechanical interfaces, weapons that turned on their new hosts. The Devourers had consumed entire alien fleets without incident, but human technology fought back from the inside. "Olsen system secure," Ko reported an hour later. "Turns out the Devourers don't like their dinner when it tries to eat them back." Similar reports came in from across human space. Captain Nam Yujin had turned a passenger liner into a ramming ship and taken out a Devourer command vessel. Engineer Osujin had rigged a space station's reactor to detonate when the Devourers tried to board it. Dr. An Solman had even weaponized medical supplies, creating biological agents that were toxic to the organic components of Devourer ships. None of these tactics appeared in any military manual. None of them would have been approved by any. Same command structure, all of them worked. "The Devourers are adapting," Dr. Yoon observed, studying the latest intelligence reports. "They're learning to counter our tactics." "Good," Hana replied. "That means they're starting to think like us, instead of like the aliens. And if there's one thing humans are better at than anyone else, it's thinking outside the box." She looked at the tactical display, watching the red dots of Devourer fleets as they regrouped and prepared for their next assault. For millions of years, these creatures had consumed civilizations by learning their military doctrines and turning them against them. but human military doctrine could be summed up in one simple phrase: there is no doctrine. All ships, Hana broadcast on the general communication channel, prepare for the next wave. Remember, we're not trying to fight fair, we're trying to win. Use everything you've got, everything you can think of, and everything you can improvise. Make them afraid to eat us? Across human space, captains and crew members who had been dismissed as auxiliary support personnel began preparing for battles that would determine the fate of the galaxy. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and equipped. With primitive technology, they had never been more dangerous. Captain Lee Hana floated in zero gravity through the corridors of the Devour mothership, her magnetic boots clicking against the organic metal of the walls. The sound echoed strangely in the alien atmosphere, mixing with the wet breathing sounds. That came from the ship's living components. It had taken 3 weeks of planning to get here. 3 weeks of studying Devourer behavior patterns, analyzing their ship designs, and coming up with a plan so completely insane that no rational military commander would have approved it, which was exactly why it might work. Status report. She whispered into her helmet communicator. Demolitions team in position, came the voice of Specialist Shin Woojin. The toys are ready to play. Medical team standing by, reported Dr. On Soman. The medicine is prepared. Engineering team has eyes on the target, announced Tech Specialist Ko Jiho. This thing is even uglier on the inside. Hana looked around at the nightmare architecture surrounding her strike team. The Devourer mothership was like nothing humans had ever seen before. The walls pulsed with their own heartbeat. Cables that might have been nerves or might have been power conduits snaked along the ceiling. Everything was wet, organic, and utterly alien, but it was also vulnerable in ways the Devourers had never imagined. The plan had started with a simple observation. The Devourers consumed other civilizations by literally eating their technology and absorbing their knowledge. But every time they consumed something, they made it part of themselves. And if that something was designed to fight back from the inside? Remember, Hana said quietly, we're not here to destroy this ship. We're here to give it indigestion. The strike team had reached the mothership by hiding inside a damaged Veltari vessel that the Devourers had partially consumed 3 days earlier. The organic ships were used to absorbing the remnants of their prey, so they hadn't noticed the humans concealed in shielded compartments deep within the crystal ship's structure. Now, 12 humans were loose inside a ship the size of a small moon, carrying weapons and equipment that no sane military would have authorized. Shin Woojin's toys were explosive devices built from components, salvaged from destroyed human ships. But these weren't normal explosives. Each one was designed to integrate with organic systems before detonating, mimicking the way Devourer technology consumed its prey. Dr. An Summon's medicine was even more creative. She had spent weeks analyzing tissue samples from dead Devourer ships, developing biological agents that would target the organic components of their technology. The Devourers had evolved to consume alien biology, but they had never encountered viruses specifically designed to attack them. Ko Jiho's engineering team carried something that looked like standard human computer equipment but had been modified in ways that would have horrified any alien technician. Instead of following safety protocols, these devices were designed to spread chaos through any network they contacted. Target acquired, Ko reported. The central processing node is, well, it's disgusting, but it's definitely the ship's brain. Hana moved carefully through a corridor that felt more like the inside of a digestive tract than a hallway. Ahead of her, she could see the central chamber of the mothership. It was enormous, filled with organic computers that pulsed with bioluminescent light. And floating in the center of it all was the Devourer that commanded this fleet. The creature was nothing like the ships it controlled. It was purely organic, a mass of tentacles and neural tissue that extended throughout the chamber like a living web. Smaller Devourers moved around it, tending to the organic computers and processing the information flowing in from across the galaxy. That's their commander, Hana whispered. It's been alive for millions of years, consuming civilizations and learning from them. Not for much longer, Shin said grimly. The assault began exactly as planned, which meant it immediately went completely wrong. Shin's explosives were supposed to integrate with the ship's organic systems before detonating. Instead, the first device was detected and consumed by the ship's immune system before it could arm itself. The second device worked perfectly, creating a localized explosion that severed several major nerve clusters. Dr. Summon's biological agents were designed to spread slowly through the ship's organic components. Instead, they worked so well that entire sections of the ship began shutting down immediately, triggering automatic defense responses that hadn't been activated for centuries. KOS. Computer viruses were supposed to create confusion in the ship's information networks. Instead, they crashed half the ship's systems and accidentally activated some kind of emergency broadcast that alerted every Devourer ship in the fleet. "This is not going according to plan," KO observed as alarms began sounding throughout the ship. "Good," Hannah replied. "Plans are predictable. The Devourers expect predictable." What followed was the strangest battle in the history of warfare. The humans fought their way through corridors that tried to digest them, past organic computers that attempted to reprogram their equipment, and around defensive systems that had been designed to counter threats that no longer existed. The Devourers fought back with weapons that could reshape matter at the molecular level, but they were confused by enemies who refused to follow any logical tactical pattern. Every time they adapted to counter one human tactic, the humans switched to something completely different. Shin-rigged explosives that were actually medical supplies designed to trigger allergic reactions in organic metal. Dr. Soman used her surgical knowledge to perform what amounted to battlefield surgery on the ship's nervous system. KO turned his computer expertise to biological systems, treating the ship's brain like a very large and very disgusting database that needed to be reformatted. "We're not winning," Hannah realized as she watched her team work. "We're giving this thing a nervous breakdown." The mothership was indeed having what could only be described as a psychological crisis. For millions of years, it had consumed civilizations by learning their patterns and countering them systematically. But humans didn't have patterns. They had instincts, improvisation, and a willingness to try things that made no sense. The ship's ancient mind couldn't process enemies who used medical equipment as weapons, turned safety systems into booby traps, and treated warfare like a creative exercise rather than a scientific discipline. "Central processing node is destabilizing," KO reported. "Whatever this thing uses for a brain, it's not designed to handle paradoxes. Biological systems are rejecting integrated human technology," Dr. Soman added. "It's like the ship is trying to vomit out everything it's ever consumed." "Structural integrity is failing in multiple sections," Shin called out. "The explosives aren't just damaging the ship, they're making it question its own existence." Hannah looked around the central chamber. The massive creature that commanded the fleet was writhing in what could only be called confusion. Its tentacles moved erratically, disconnecting and reconnecting to different organic computers as it tried to process what was happening to its ship. For the first time in millions of years, a Devourer was experiencing something it had never felt before. "Doubt, time to go," Hannah announced. "Everyone back to the extraction point. We've done enough damage." As her team retreated through the dying ship, Hannah could hear the creature's screams echoing through the organic corridors. It wasn't just pain. It was the sound of an ancient predator discovering that it could be prey. The humans escaped in the same Veltari ship they had arrived in, leaving behind a mothership that was slowly tearing itself apart as its own immune system attacked the human modifications to its structure, but more importantly, they left behind something the Devourers had never encountered before: fear. "Think it worked?" Shin asked as they cleared the mothership's debris field. "Look at the tactical display," Hannah replied. The Devourer fleet was scattering in all directions, abandoning their coordinated attack patterns for the first time in their species' history. The destruction of their mothership had done more than eliminate their command structure. It had shown them that they were not invincible. For millions of years, the Devourers had been the ultimate predators. Now they knew what It felt like to be hunted, and they didn't like it at all. 1 year later, Admiral Lee Hanna stood before the new Galactic Assembly in a chamber that looked very different from the old Council headquarters. The floating platforms were gone, replaced by a circular arrangement where all species sat at the same level. The lighting was warmer, and the architecture suggested cooperation rather than hierarchy. It had taken 6 months to hunt down the last of the Devourer ships, not because they were hiding particularly well, but because they had become so erratic and unpredictable that finding them required patience and luck rather than strategy. The ancient predators had been so traumatized by their encounter with human tactics that many of them had simply fled to the edge of the galaxy and refused to come out. The few that had tried to continue their attacks had discovered that the other galactic species had learned some uncomfortable lessons about the dangers of predictability. Veltari ships now fought in loose formations that could adapt quickly to changing situations. Hive collective vessels operated with individual initiative rather than pure hive mind coordination. Even the Nexus Empire had begun experimenting with what they called controlled chaos in their tactical doctrines, but it was the humans who had led the final campaign to eliminate the Devourer threat completely. The last confirmed Devourer vessel was destroyed 3 days ago in the Outer Rim, Hanna reported to the assembled representatives. Analysis of the wreckage suggests it had been modified with primitive weapons and defensive systems, indicating that even they had begun trying to adapt human tactics. Director Park Suyon of the Human Diplomatic Corps nodded from her seat among the other species representatives. It was still strange to see humans sitting as equals among beings who had dismissed them as primitives just a year ago. What is the current status of galactic defense capabilities? Asked the Veltari representative. This was a different crystal being than Kreese, whose ship had been one of the first consumed by the Devourers. The new ambassador's crystalline body showed patches of different colors where it had been repaired after battle damage. Stronger than ever, Hanna replied. But not because our technology improved, because our thinking improved. She activated a holographic display that showed the current state of galactic military forces. The neat, orderly formations of the past had been replaced by flexible, adaptive structures that could respond to unexpected threats. The Devourer War taught us that perfection is a weakness, Hanna continued. They had studied our perfect military doctrines so thoroughly that they could counter every move we made. It was only when we started making moves that made no sense that we gained an advantage. The Hive Collective representative, a worker drone with modified neural implants that allowed for individual thought, clicked softly. This human concept of improvisation has been difficult for my people to learn. We are beings of collective efficiency. But you're learning it, Hanna observed. Your new combat formations show individual ships making independent decisions while maintaining overall coordination. That's something your species never did before. It is uncomfortable, the Hive representative admitted, but effective. The last Devourer ship we encountered could not predict our actions because we did not predict our own actions. Admiral Vex of the Nexus Empire flickered in what Hanna had learned was amusement. His energy form had been upgraded with new containment systems that allowed for rapid reconfiguration, something that would have horrified the old Nexus military engineers. We have designated this new approach as dynamic tactical evolution. It involves deliberately introducing random elements into our strategic planning. You mean you've learned to improvise? Hanna said with a smile. We prefer our terminology, Vex replied, but there was warmth in his electrical discharges. It sounds more scientific. The meeting continued for several hours as the various species reported on their new military capabilities. The galaxy was indeed stronger than it had ever been, but not in the way anyone had expected. The Veltari had developed adaptive resonance techniques that allowed their crystal ships to change their properties during battle. The Hive Collective was experimenting with distributed consciousness that gave individual ships more autonomy. The Nexus Empire had created chaos generators that could introduce random variables into their energy weapons. All of them were trying, in their own ways, to become more human. "There's one more matter to discuss," said Director Park. "The question of galactic leadership structure." This was the moment Hannah had been dreading. The old Galactic Council had been destroyed along with most of its military forces. The surviving alien civilizations had naturally looked to humanity for guidance, since human forces had been the only ones capable of fighting the Devourers effectively. But Hannah remembered the arrogance of the old council, the way they had dismissed humanity as too primitive to matter. She didn't want to see that pattern repeated with humans in charge. "The new Galactic Assembly will not have a single dominant species," she announced. "Each member civilization will contribute according to its strengths. Military command will rotate based on the nature of the threat we're facing." The alien representatives looked surprised. They had expected humanity to claim the leadership role that victory had given them. But humans demonstrated superior tactical capabilities, the Veltari representative pointed out. "It would be logical for your species to lead our military forces for this war, yes," Hannah agreed. "But the next threat might be different. It might require Veltari precision or hive coordination or nexus energy manipulation. We can't prepare for unknown threats by putting all our trust in one approach." She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed the diverse fleets of the Galactic Alliance. "Look at what we've built together. Ships that combine human unpredictability with alien technology. Tactics that merge improvisation with precision. Strategies that use chaos and order together." "You're saying diversity makes us stronger?" asked the Hive representative. "I'm saying that the Devourers could beat any one of us alone because they could learn our patterns. But they couldn't beat all of us together because we don't have just one pattern." Admiral Vex's form pulsed brighter. "An interesting conclusion. You suggest that our greatest strength lies not in perfecting one approach, but in maintaining multiple approaches simultaneously." "Exactly. The old council failed because it tried to make everyone fight the same way. The Devourers failed because they expected everyone to fight the same way. We're going to succeed because we fight every way." The vote to establish the new Galactic Assembly structure was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, military command would be shared based on merit and situation rather than technological superiority or political dominance. As the session ended, Hannah found herself standing alone in the chamber, looking out at the stars through the massive windows. A year ago, she had been dismissed as a primitive auxiliary officer. Now she was the architect of a new galactic order, but what struck her most was how little had actually changed. Humans were still using primitive technology. They were still outnumbered and outgunned by the alien species. They were still, by most measures, the least advanced civilization in the galaxy. They just weren't underestimated anymore. "Impressive speech, Admiral," came a voice behind her. Hannah turned to see Commander Park Jin-ho, who had been promoted to Director of Human Military Affairs. He looked older than he had a year ago, with gray in his hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of too many difficult decisions. "Think it will work?" she asked. "The alliance? The shared command structure, the new military doctrines?" Park considered for a moment. "Probably not the way we planned it. But that's okay. We're good at adapting when plans don't work." Hannah laughed. "Is that going to be our new motto? Humanity, good at adapting when plans don't work? Could be worse. The Veltari motto is crystalline perfection through harmonic resonance." They stood together looking out at the stars, watching the ships of the new Galactic Alliance move past in formations that would have horrified military theorists from any species. Human vessels flew alongside Veltari crystal ships in patterns that seemed random but somehow worked. Hive collective swarms coordinated with Nexus Empire energy beings in ways that defied conventional tactical wisdom. It was chaotic, unpredictable, and completely insane. It was also the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. "You know what the really funny part is?" Hannah said finally. "What's that?" "The aliens were right. We are outclassed by their technology. We are primitive compared to their science. We are chaotic compared to their order." She smiled. They just didn't realize that sometimes being outclassed is exactly what makes you dangerous. In the distance, a new patrol formation was forming up for deployment to the Outer Rim. Human, Veltari, Hive, and Nexus ships working together in a pattern that no enemy could predict because it didn't follow any rules. The galaxy was safe not because it had become more perfect,